Good evening, everyone, and welcome. We're starting tonight, chapter 37 of Tanya. Just a refresh from what we studied thus far. We have discovered that the purpose of creation, the macro, the universe, is because God desired to have an abode here on earth. We discovered that He desired, and on a desire, you don't ask why. I desire, I wanted an abode where he can express himself like his own home, and the expression of a person is reflected in the home, much different than any other place, no matter how lavish and beautiful the place is. And he wanted it in the lowest possible created entity, which is the farthest from God, and this is a physical universe. Nowhere else a creation or an entity can exist that is far from God as this universe. And therefore, God wants to be here. We also discovered that the ultimate goal of God is to reveal himself in his abode. And our job is to create that abode through our mitzvot and study of Torah. Last week we discovered that God has given the Jewish people a taste of like a model home. When you want to go to a development and want to see the developer, is he doing a good job? What those type of homes and appliances, etc. You walk into a model home, and the purpose is to convince you to design and envision what the ultimate end will be when you finish building a house. God has given us a model home and the giving of the Torah, which we will be celebrating in 2 weeks from tonight. What is the giving of the Torah? God came down and healed everyone and quieted down all animosity and hatred and all jealousy and all hardship, and everybody in unison proclaimed, Maaseh v'nishma, we will do and obey and listen to your reasoning. Unfortunately, as we will discover in chapter 37, anytime something comes easy to men, or as we call it in Mount and the giving of the Torah, that came from above to below, it doesn't last. It's not holding on. It will be steady. It will be steadfast and held by humans when humans are invested. And that's why God is waiting for the arrival of Mashiach. Until the arrival of Mashiach, the example we did not last, because 40 days later, they already cheated on God. They committed the worst sin, that they transgressed the first 2 commandments of I am your God, and thou shalt not worship any other God. I want to show you a story as an introduction to chapter 37. The following is the Ruzhiner. Ruzhiner, when we say Ruzhiner, mean the rabbi of Ruzhin, it refers to Rabbi Israel of Ruzhin. He's actually the grandson of the Baal Shem Tov. He was a famous rabbi. Rabbi Israel of Ruzhin. Ruzhin is a town in Hungary. One time shared with his Hasidim the following. He says that there was a villager who walked into synagogue for the first time in his life on Rosh Hashanah. Never been to synagogue, never celebrated Rosh Hashanah. As he opened up the prayer book, he didn't know what was said. He didn't read Hebrew, but he tried to be part of the crowd. Suddenly, when the crowd came into the Amidah prayer and they took the word seriously, they started crying. So he said to himself, why are they crying? There's no fight. No one is punching anybody. What's the commotion? And he was thinking, what can be the reason for them to cry? Finally, he says to himself, probably they are very, very hungry. And the cantor is not letting them go home. Not the rabbi, God forbid. But the cantor is taking his time with his melodies, and they are hungry. It's already 11:30. By that time, they already past their lunch. So they're crying. So he started crying too because he remembered that he's hungry. But then after the midah, everybody stopped crying. So he said to himself, why now they're not crying anymore? What's going on? And then he said to himself, probably they have a stew on the fire. And the stew, the meat on the fire, the longer it cooks, the softer and tastier it gets. So probably they remember that the meal that they're going to be eating on this holiday is a nice steak that is sitting on the fire and is cooking very slowly, so it's going to be very tasty. So they calm down. But then they came to the sound of the shofar, the blowing of the shofar, and just before the sound of the shofar, the preparation, they started crying, they started shedding tears because they wanted to be blessed for a year. He didn't understand. He says, so what's now? Why are they crying now? So he's thinking, why are they crying? Then he says to himself finally, it's good to know that the stew is going to get tastier the longer it's on the fire. But how much can we wait? It's too much waiting. And that's why they are crying for the second time. That's the story of Rabbi Israel of Ruzhin. Did anybody heard the story from me before? Well, when he left, the rabbi left, the Hasidim said that this is a good parable, a good explanation of the galut, of exile. God says that the longer that we are in exile, the better off we are, because we have an opportunity to please God and to connect to God. After exile, there will be no opportunity to ascend, to get closer to God. Wherever we reach now, that's where we're going to stay. There is no way to change because we're not going to be given challenges. So it's like the stew, the longer it cooks, the tastier it gets. But then, so we understand that. But after a while, we start crying and saying, Viful Ashir, how long can we wait? It's already too much. We know the longer the better. We know another day in exile, another opportunity to pray to God, another opportunity to celebrate a holiday in Shabbat. But genug shein, it's enough. It's time for it to end. This is the idea of redemption. As long as we are in exile, we are building an abode for God. The longer it takes, the greater the opportunity to improve and perfect and add of God's palace. However, and therefore the ultimate goal is for presenting it to God and saying, here's your palace, all our deeds. But there is a time when we say to God, it's time to go home. It's time we have to finish. Sometimes you have to say finish. The Lubavitcher Rebbe was entrusted by the previous Rebbe with publishing all of Chabad publications. And many times he was a genius beyond. And whenever the Rebbe spoke, he would be able to find sources and say it's in Zohar that page, in Talmud that page, without having the books. There are notes that he put into connection to sources without having the sources in front of him. So he once said, more than once, but I heard it, that he would prepare a booklet of Torah teaching, and he would tell his helpers, take it away from me, because the longer it's on my table, the more discoveries, the more connection, the more sources I find. And it becomes endless. In other words, another revision. And the Rebbe would always find more revisions and more revisions. But there is a time you say, people need to see it and study it. So take it away from my desk, go and print it. Because if you keep it another day, I'll make more revisions. It will take longer. And this is the idea. This is where we are. And it's time. And the Rebbe already said that Mashiach is here. The time has already arrived a long time ago. All we have to do, the Rebbe's words, open up our eyes. There is nothing left to do but open up the eyes. How do you open up the eyes? So the Rebbe pointed out the best way to open up our eyes is to study about Mashiach, which is what we are doing. This chapter is going to express what I've just shared in details, and my job, my role in this creativity and activity. In other words, don't think that this goal, the ultimate goal is to bring Mashiach and to come to the point of redemption where the entire universe will change, is given only to holy people. An individual can say, what am I doing? It doesn't count. It doesn't matter if I do or don't. Chapter 37, the Rabbi is going to address this very specific point. My relations with regards to the coming of Mashiach as an individual. And here is an introduction to what the Rabbi is going to be speaking about. The Rabbi is going to speak about, and we're going to get into details. The Rabbi is going to speak about the role of my body, physical body, the role of my mouth, the role of my objects, and the role of my consumption of food. Mouth has two purposes: speaking outwards and consuming inwards. Both have a purpose in bringing Mashiach. My body has a purpose in bringing Mashiach, and the way, and every object that God has given me has a purpose in bringing Mashiach. And that's going to be the theme of the Rebbe's discussion. Let's read the text. So we're reading on page 496. In the previous, I'm reading the introduction of Rabbi Weinberg to chapter 37. In the previous chapter, the Alter Rebbe explained that the statement of the sages that God desired an abode in the lower realms refer to our physical world. This is the lowest of worlds in terms of the degree of revelation of the divine creative power. It is hidden in this world as it is in no other world. God is so hidden in this universe that no other world God is as hidden as in this universe. God desired precisely this world, pervaded as it is with doubled and redoubled darkness, as his abode, whereas his presence would ultimately be revealed to a greater degree than it is revealed in the higher worlds without any concealing garments whatsoever. So on one hand, God created the most concealed entity where God is completely gone, unfelt, totally removed from God. However, the goal is to bring God to be revealed here more than any other place. So in other worlds, spiritual, no matter how spiritual and close they are to God, God will never be revealed in those universes as much as he's going to be revealed here at the ultimate target. This will come to pass in the Messianic era, the period for which the world was originally created, when godliness will be manifest throughout the world, so that all the nations of earth will experience divine revelation. When Mashiach will come, every single nation, not the Jewish people, will experience God's revelation the way that we see, and they will witness and admit and be part of that program. Says the Alter Rebbe, now, this ultimate perfection of the Messianic era and the time of the resurrection of the dead, meaning the revelation of the Ein Sof light in this physical world, resurrection of the dead is revelation of the Ein Sof power. Only God can create something from nothing, and only God can return back to resurrect someone who died. Anytime people talk about resurrection, or Messiah has arrived, say to them that for us, Messiah is the perfect universe where no nations will be fighting each other, where everybody comes back. As soon as that happens, that's Messianic era. If this didn't happen, there is no Messianic era. Said the Rebbe, dependent on our actions and divine service throughout the period of exile. Unlike the aforementioned revelation at Sinai, which was initiated by God, on Mount Sinai, God revealed himself. And therefore, as we discovered, it didn't last. God wants us to invest, to sweat, to work hard, so that when finally God will reveal himself in this world more than any other universe, we would have appreciated to a degree that we'll never let go of it. For it is the mitzvah itself that creates its reward, and I'll explain that. The Rebbe notes, unlike, for example, the wages paid by the owner of a field to the laborer who plows and plants in it, whereas the labor does not create the money he is paid, a mitzvah actually creates its own reward. Let me explain with a story. The following is a story of the tzaddik of Apta. Apta is a town of Poland, famous rabbi, lived around town 200 years ago. He was known as the Apta tzaddik. One day, a chassid came to him. That chassid wasn't doing financially well, and he had a daughter to marry. And in those days, even today, if you want to marry off your daughter, you need to come up with a boatload of cash. You need to have lots of money. It's called nedunya. And that's how you attract the young boys. You're going to give them an apartment or a house. You're going to help them to study Torah for the first couple of years so that they don't have to worry financially. That's what you offer, and that makes the value greater. What happened to an orphan or of a girl that has no parents or the parents cannot afford? She's left by the by-side. She's unfortunately. So this chassid's wife turned to her and says, look, you have no good luck. You don't earn a living. Go to your Rebbe and ask for a blessing for our daughter to get married, to find a shirt. So he goes to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe asks, what can I do for you? And he says, Rebbe, I need a blessing to marry off my daughter, and I don't have money. So the Rebbe told him to open up his drawer and took out a ruble. And he said to him, here is a blessing for you. I'm giving you the ruble as a gift. The first business opportunity you have to do with this ruble, take it. Take the first opportunity, and God will be with you, that you'll be successful to afford the wedding. The chassid believes in the Rebbe. He trusts the Rebbe. He left very happy, and he's going back home. He got the Rebbe's blessing, not only a blessing, the Rebbe gave him a coin. On the way, he stopped by an inn, a small inn, and Ali, you didn't hear the story?
Every Jewish story has somebody stopping in an inn, so no, I can't tell you which story.
So he stopped by an inn to to cool down. It was a hot day, and to buy a drink. He bought himself a Coke Zero, and he sees a bunch of businessmen sitting around the table on the bar. So he comes close, and it turned out that they were diamond dealers. And they came in for a big diamond show, a big diamond exchange that was taking place. And each one was showing their diamonds and expressing how valuable they are and how much. And he was very curious because he never saw diamonds. So he started looking at the diamonds. He got closer. And then one of the men over there turned to him and says, what about you? Do you have any diamonds to sell? He says, no. So what do you have for sale? He says, actually, I didn't come to sell. I came to buy. I have 1 ruble. What do you have for sale for 1 ruble? Because he knew the first opportunity that he has, and that's an opportunity, they're businessmen. And they started laughing. 1 ruble. What can you do with 1 ruble? The dust of the diamonds is worth more. So one of the diamond dealers was a wise guy. He says, I have something I can sell you. And the guy says, whatever you have for sale, I'll buy. He said, I don't have diamonds for 1 ruble, but I'm willing to sell you my world to come, my heaven. For a ruble, I'll sell you my heaven. And the man says, sure, no problem, I'll buy it. And he made the guy was joking. He made the guy write a note. I thereby to sell my world to come to this, he mentioned the name, for the cost of 1 ruble. And there were 2 witnesses, the other man, and they exchanged. The guy gave him a ruble and he took the paper, the businessman. He was very happy because he did what the Rebbe told him. Now, the way I read it many years ago is that he picked himself, now he has no money even to do anything else, because so he picked himself up and started walking. Tonight I read the story again that it didn't necessarily left yet, but they're all mocking him and laughing at this guy. He's a lo yutzlach. He has no luck, and it shows by the way he conducts himself. He sold he gave a ruble for nothing. But his wife, the wife of that guy, comes down from her room to check up on her husband. This was an Inuit hotel rooms. And they laughing, they say, your husband is such a lucky man. He just made a ruble from nothing. And she asked, well, how did he do it? And they told her the story. She turned to her husband and says, what? You sold your world to come? You're like an evil person. I don't want to live with an evil person. It means you're not going to heaven. It means you're going to go to hell, because no matter how much heaven you have, you sold it. I'm not living with you. I want a get. She says, what do you mean? She said, I don't want to share my life in heaven with a man that is in hell. I don't want. And he says, I was joking. I was just making fun of this guy, Lo Yutzlach. He has no idea about business. And she says, no, this is not a joke. He wrote a contract, right? There's a piece of paper, right? So it's a contract. So you have no world to come. You have no heaven. You're going to hell. I'm not going to be with you. I want a get. He says, what? She says, yeah, I want a get. I want to share my life with someone who goes to heaven. Make the story short, the guy chased the man or found him and says, here is your ruble, give me back the paper. And the man said, no way. He says, what do you mean? I was joking. He says, you were joking. I wasn't. We saw the paper. Now we see who is the smartest businessman. So the guy says, okay, so I'll give you 2 rubles. You make 100% on the dollar. He says, no, I'm not giving you the note. I'm not willing to sell back your world to come. It's mine. He says, please, come on. What do you want? He says, I need 10,000 rubles. It was 10,000 rubles. So you're out of your mind. Are you meshuggah? He says, no, I'm not meshuggah. To marry off my daughter, the need for me to find her a nice husband, and the cost of the wedding, and the dresses, and the hall, and the music, and the photographer is 10,000 rubles. That's what I need. If you want back your heaven, you gotta give me 10,000 rubles. And the guy ran away from him. But his wife says, he comes back, his wife is waiting in front of all his friends. Where's the, show me back the note that he sold it back to you. He says, no, the guy's meshuggah. He wants 10,000 rubles. And she says, you have a choice. Either you pay him 10,000 rubles and make him write a note that he sold it back to you, or I want to get now. I'm not going to stay a night with you. We're going to the rabbi, I want to get. Make the story short, he had to foot the bill. He had to sell a few diamonds at 60 cents to $1 and give him cash in gold, 10,000 rubles. The guy was happy as can be, but now his wife agreed to take him back. But something bothered her. She said to herself and to her husband, I know you not to be such a righteous man. I know you to be a simple man. You cheat in business. You don't always keep your word. I don't think your heaven is worth 10,000 rubles. I don't think so. So it bothered her because she heard that the man said that the Rebbe gave him a ruble and told him the first opportunity you have, buy, and it will help you with your wedding. So she knew that the rabbi had to do with it. So she decided to travel to the rabbi and ask him the question, is her husband's heaven really valued at 10,000 rubles? Because she didn't think so. So she came in with her husband and she told the Rebbe the story. And after Rebbe was asked by her, did my husband overpaid or he really paid the value? So the after Rebbe told her the following. When he sold it for a ruble, it wasn't even worth 1 ruble. His heaven was nowhere, not even a single ruble. But after he gave him 10,000 ruble, assisting him in marrying off his daughter, his heaven is worth every penny of it. That's the idea of schar mitzvah, the reward, the Rebbe says, and the Rebbe is pushing it a little further. The reward of a mitzvah is the mitzvah itself. And the Rebbe points out an example. I hire a painter, and I told the painter that for painting the wall is going to get $50. Is the painting creating the $50? The answer is no. There is no relations between the $50 check and the paint that he applied on the wall. There is no relationship. The only thing is I enjoy the work, his time and talent and material, and I'm willing to pay for it. But there is no direct connection between painting and getting paid. When it comes to a mitzvah, says the Rebbe, what you're doing is like building your own home. So the greater you invest in the mitzvah, the bigger the home. The more beautiful the mitzvah you do, the more beautiful the abode. Just like this man, by giving away 10,000 ruble, he actually created a heaven that's worth 10,000 ruble. But up to that point, it wasn't. Says the Rebbe, when the world comes to the ultimate goal, what are we going to be rewarded? Is not God is going to say, okay, you were tested so many times, or you lost your business so many occasions because you kept Shabbat or you kept the honesty, and therefore I'll make up for it. That's not the case. God says for the effort that you invested, you are connecting with me. I will bring you closer to me. And that's the greatest reward. The pleasure, the ability to be closer to God and to feel godliness with less concealment is created by the very essence of my mitzvah. So when I shake the lulav, or when I light Shabbat candles, or when I bring a guest into my house, what I do? I am bringing pleasure to God. And God says, oh, you like me. You make me happy. I'm going to be closer to you. And that's the reward. So the reward of a mitzvah is a mitzvah itself. Did I make myself clear? Yes. You have a rule? You have a ruble? I don't have a daughter to marry.
You might
I might.
in the future.
In the future, God willing. Let's continue. The rabbi is going to talk about how we do a mitzvah. The mitzvah can be performed through our body and all the goods that God had given us in a proper way without disobeying God, like stealing, like lying, like disrespect. When I am able to acquire a lulav, a home where I bring guests without breaking God's laws, that's how I connect to God. That's the pleasure. And therefore, when will God reveal himself? When will God come to the ultimate, where God is revealed completely? When we removed all the coverings. Those coverings are removed every time I do a mitzvah with a physical object. That's the uniqueness of each individual Jew, and that's the uniqueness of this universe. So an angel obeys God all the time, but they are not pleasing God. They're doing the job just like a robot or a machine. If I plug in a fan, the fan does its job. He's not asking for reward because he had no choice. He wasn't making a choice, and there is no hardship. It does what it was created. It's mechanical. A human being making a choice, therefore, brings pleasure to God. Did I give you the example of the parrot that speaks, that the king? I shared with you a couple of weeks ago that there is a king that was received a gift, a parakeet that talks, that responds. Even though the words the parakeet says is only hello, hi, goodbye, that's it. It's a wonder that anyone comes to visit the king says, let me show you a wonder. And he takes him to the parakeet and says to the parakeet, say hi. Now, those words are so little, and every one of the ministers speaks untold greater number of words than that parrot. But for a minister to speak, it's no great achievement. But for the parakeet, it is. And therefore, human beings who are tested and are far from God and still are serving God, it is the greatest pleasure for God. Just like the king priding himself with this prize gift that he received, which is a parakeet. Yes, Harry.
Person wanted to mitzvah with something, I think God tells you how about that, that's not with something, it's just by words.
So you're asking, we can perform a mitzvah with action, like walking to synagogue. We can perform a mitzvah with speech, like prayer or study of Torah, and we can perform a mitzvah with intelligence. That's the first one. There are three. All of them are in this physical universe. But according to Kabbalah, the greatest achievement is only through action. Therefore, the Gemara, the Mishnah in Ethics of Our Fathers, this debates, which is more important, mitzvot or study of Torah? And what's the conclusion? Mitzvot. A Torah because it brings to action. So when someone is study Torah without action, the Gemara uses the phrase in Hebrew, Noach lo shenefcha sheliato. His umbilical cord should have choked him. In other words, it should not have been born. Those who study Torah by themselves. In other words, the debate will come to a kind of compromise. Torah is greater because without Torah, you don't know how to perform. But if someone does Torah only, the Gemara says, Noach lo shenefcha sheliato, that it shouldn't have been born, because the action is everything in this universe. So
Some Torah.
it's a good question.
In the morning, you say all the things that are good, going to shul, and they have the mornings one, but at the end says the Talmud Torah connected because of learning Torah is better than all the other things.
Is reward greater than everything else? So I'm going to try to attempt to answer this. Okay. And I'm going to use a metaphor from the human being. Torah represents God's wisdom. Yes or no? Chokhmah, the wisdom of God. Mitzvot represent God's desire. Do you understand that? When I study Torah, I am taking God himself. The Chokhmah means God's intelligent. He put in a book. So when I understand, I study Torah like we do now, and I understand what God said, I am actually taking God's wisdom into me. It becomes part of me. As in chapter 5, the Alter Rebbe explains that in Torah study, there are three things that happen at the same time. The Torah enters my mind, and also surrounds me all around. Because I cannot be thinking about two objects at the same time. So when my mind is busy studying Torah, I connect to God, to God's wisdom. Is that clear so far? There is a difference between action of mitzvot versus study of Torah. When you study Torah, when a person studies Torah, we connect to God's wisdom or intelligence. And that connection is very unique. Nothing else can be as close to God as the study of Torah. However, when one performs a mitzvah, he fulfills God's desire. God's desire, we did not discover it, we did not discuss it at great details. I don't know why, but there are two powers within a human being that are all surrounding the person, and they are pleasure and desire. Did we discuss it? Ali, do you remember discussing pleasure and desire? When I have a desire to walk to the entrance, there is no command center in my head that tells my legs how to walk. Because once I want something, my leg, my toes, my toe fingers, my hands all want the same thing at the same time. And therefore, they walk together in tandem without needing any instruction or any command, which foot to go first, where my hands are going to be. When I want to run, when you have a desire, the desire is not in your head. The desire is every part of your body. When you enjoy, when you have pleasure, the taste buds are in my mouth, but the pleasure is in every part of the body equally, except the brain senses it. So we can sense it as if it comes from the brain, but it's not true. Therefore, if I am thinking about how to speak, my brains will instruct my mouth to say or not to say, to ask or to answer. It goes by, there is a certain system. Therefore, I can only speak one syllable at a time. I cannot just speak the questions and 5 answers at the same time. When it comes to a desire or the pleasure, I can have multiple desires and multiple pleasures at the same time, because it's not resting or nested in any particular body parts. Is that clear? Did you understand that? Says, according to Kabbalah, when I study Torah, I connect to God to a deepest level possible. There is no better way to connect to God. That's the reason the angels, we discussed, I believe, last week, that the angels wanted to keep the Torah up there. And the reason is because they wanted to connect to God to a much deeper level. However, that connection exists only when you study Torah. What happens after you're done studying Torah and now you go shopping? That relationship is taken apart. When I am serving God by helping the poor, or by eating kosher, or by restraining myself from cheating in business, that act brings pleasure to God, and therefore it's forever. It is always there. It will never go away. The connection to God, the study of Torah, by the way, is also a mitzvah, but that's a mitzvah that performed through intelligence and our mouth and speech, not in action. The uniqueness of action is that it will remain here forever and can never go. Does that answer the question, Harry? Linda, does that? So at the moment, the greatest connection, nothing can be close to intelligent, but it's only the intelligent to God's wisdom. Action is connecting to God's desire, which is all-encompassing, and it will remain forever. Once it was done, I brought pleasure to God, that pleasure stands forever. There is no time limitation. It doesn't change.
Can we say that we take action when we study the Torah?
So in the physical universe, there are two sides to the coin. And therefore, action involves also intelligence and speech involves action within speech, because using my mouth, verbalizing is action. My body moves. And intelligence also, we know our brain cells are moving. There is action. But you understand that? So there is action in intelligence as well, and as well as speech. But the ultimate action is action that affects the physical universe in the way that we see. There will be a time when Mashiach will come that we can see how the physical universe is affected by our speech and thought. That's why Mashiach will come, we'll be able to know what you're thinking. You know why? It will affect the physical universe. At this point in time, by the way, our holy men can sense what we are thinking. The Lubavitcher Rebbe many times, I'm just going to share one story. The Rebbe would say, Maftir, Haftarah, will be honor. And one time, right after became a Rebbe, one time he asked that no yeshiva boys should be around him, but only married men. Because he says, I cannot stand their thoughts, their mindset, because they're unmarried. The Rebbe says that I cannot concentrate on the reading of the Haftarah because of what's going on in their minds. So therefore, we used to push to hear the Rebbe. The Rebbe would say Haftarah in a very low tone. There is no microphone in Shabbat. But thank God I had a very close space. So, but always the first row, the first line around the bima was married men with taluses, even though they weren't as strong as yeshiva boys. And the ones who come closer are the strong people that can push themselves. Because yeshiva boys knew the Rebbe asked they should never be the front row, the first. The Rebbe sensed thought. When Mashiach will come, it says, I think I told you, Ve'erichu beirat Hashem. Mashiach will judge people by sniffing. We say it in the prophet, Ezekiel, I think, is talking about it. We read it on Passover. In other words, Mashiach, when he will come, if there is a dispute, he would not need witnesses. Because you look at the person, sniff the person. Sniff could be figuratively, meaning looking at the person and know exactly who borrowed from who said what. You don't need witnesses to know what right from wrong. Because there is action in our thought, it affects the universe. How many times the Rebbe spoke about studying Torah by heart, so when you go around, you purify the air with your words of wisdom. I learned by heart, Tanya and Mishnah, lots of it. Why? When I go on a bus as a child, as a yeshiva boy, I would study Tanya by heart. Those days, you didn't have so many booklets and smartphones to use. When I go to a doctor and I don't have books, what I do is I study Tanya by heart. Whenever I'm sitting in a car and I drive, I cannot look at your phone. So what you do, you study Mishnah or Tanya by heart. What do? You purify the air. How do you purify the air? There's nothing. Nobody can see. There is no. But when Mashiach will arrive, we will see it. In other words, there is action within speech. There is action within thought. But the ultimate, the most powerful action possible is the action of a physical mitzvah. When I eat, when I drink, when I walk, when I light candles, when I put on tefillin, this involves action with my body. It can be my hands, can be my feet, can be any other body part. When I invite a guest over to my house, when they eat, I am serving God with action. We're going to talk about my goof, my body. We're going to talk about food that we consume. We're going to talk about our expression with speech. And we're going to talk about all the goods that God had given us. Allowed goods, not stolen goods. Because if it's stolen goods, There is a discord between it and God and holiness, and it's gone. That's not what we were speaking about. So the rabbi started speaking that when you do a mitzvah, the reward is the mitzvah itself. In other words, the mitzvah has created a closeness to God. When Mashiach will arrive, the ultimate reward is to be sitting and have a connection to God. Another mitzvah you do, another veil removed. So if I take this phone and I study Torah, or I call my mother to speak, I do a mitzvah. It is good. I make it a holy object, and therefore I remove the veil. You have a question, Linda?
Just think Kabbalistically, is that the action then the only way to repair the vessel? That, I mean,
It's not a vessel. You remove a veil that is distracting or that is blocking between us and God. Another veil remove, another veil remove. When you study Torah, you also do that, because study Torah is a mitzvah. In fact, it's one of the greatest mitzvot. But the effect in this physical universe is we're going to write that's why God wants to be here in the lowest possible entity, and therefore to reveal God in the lowest possible entities through mitzvah in action of action. Another mitzvah is also important. Prayer is important. Study of Torah is important. Don't underestimate the power. But when you help a poor man, or help someone cross the street, or give them good advice, or do business in honesty, the effect, the dent that you make, or the removal of the veil in that, from that aspect, is far greater than any other one. And I hope I made myself clear the difference between Torah and mitzvot. Yes.
Einstein question.
There's no question that's,
Since we use this to do mitzvah, it becomes a holy object.
yes.
You start against, you saw, you like to take a smartphone to the bathroom.
So that's a good question. Are you allowed to take a smartphone to the bathroom? Let me ask you another question. Is your body holy? Perfectly holy. Because that's why we bury. We're going to get to it. That our bodies are a very holy object, because it's a vessel that houses a soul, which is God. The body is very holy. We treat the body with the utmost honor when the human expires. Why? Because it housed the neshama, just like a Torah scroll, right? How can I go into the bathroom? My body into the bathroom? Huh? Because of my needs. So perhaps my phone is also my needs. Of course. So the answer is, are you allowed to erase an app that has Torah into it?
Not sure.
I am sure. The answer is, of course, you're allowed to. And the reason is digital print. Digital print is not actual written. It's dots, little small dots, pixels that are formed together. When you turn off the phone, what happened to those pixels? They're gone. The pixels are lights. It's pixelated is with lights. When you printed, if I have a Torah page here, and I printed a piece of paper, it's with ink, and therefore if God's name appears there, don't take it to the bathroom. Do not disrespect it. You cannot do anything you want with it. You don't want to use it, we bury it. We're going to talk about Gniza, by the way, later on in this chapter. But if I have the same page here, I can turn off the app and I can trash the app, because that page is not a real page. It's just a vision on a screen. Just like if you have a screen behind me and you see a page, nothing is written, because it's just the images of light. The light creates different colors, etc. So we're going to continue one or two more paragraphs. By performing the mitzvah, man draws the revelation of the blessed Ein Sof light from above downward. And I think I shared with you that resurrection of the dead is the revelation of Ein Sof. And therefore, when Mashiach will come, what happens to my body? My body will come back alive in the most perfect state it was, 18 years of age, or 16. We will return back with bodies of 18 years of age. To be clothed in the physicality of this world, that is, in an object which had heretofore been under the dominion of the Klipat Nuga, and had received its vitality from this klipa. Let me just explain what the rabbi wants to say here. The Rebbe says that the only way to reveal godliness in the universe is from an object that we are allowed to engage with. What happens if I take something I'm not allowed to engage with? I eat on Shabbat, non-kosher food. Not only it does not please God and remove the veil from connection to God, but actually does the opposite, creating another veil. That explains many, many details. Just one example. And a cow that died naturally. A cow is a kosher animal? Yes, right? Died naturally. Is it kosher for consumption? The answer is absolutely not. Am I allowed to use the hide of a cow to write Torah, Tefillin, and Mezuzah? The answer is yes. The question is, so the cow is kosher or not? What's going on? And the answer is, for consumption, it's unacceptable. But for service of God, in Torah, Tefillin, and Mezuzah, it is acceptable. If I took a non-kosher animal and I used the hide, it's an abomination to God. You cannot use it for Torah, Tefillin, and Mezuzah. If I slaughter the animal, non-kosher animal, I said the blessing, I remove the blood, and I grilled it. If I ate it, or I use it for Tefillin, Torah, and Mezuzah, I disobey God. In other words, God, there is what we call klipat nuga. We study it many, many times. Nuga means it's a shell that can be converted into holiness. There is the three klipot, the three shells that are unacceptable, and anything that belongs there will never allow us to remove and reveal God. That explains, and there are many, many examples. I'm going to share one. The rabbi is going to use any other example. On the altar, there was an animal that's kosher animal, but the innards, the stomach, the digestive system, always had to be removed no matter what sacrifice it is. And that is the dove. Dove can be used as a sacrifice for sin offering for a poor man. There is, anytime a metzorah is purified, he has to bring doves. There are many, many times that a person can bring a dove as an offering to God. No matter what, the dove's innards always must be removed. Now, you cannot tell me because it's going to smell bad if it's put on the fire, because the feathers are placed on the altar. The entire dove is going to be placed on the altar, but we take out the innards, the stomach, and remove it, the kishke, as we call it, and everything else. Believe me, it's a foul odor to smell feathers of a dove. It's very difficult. When it comes to other animals, sheep, lamb, bull, cow, we put on the altar, depending on the type, but many times the innards have to be placed on the altar. And the reason is the Torah tells us a dove lives freely. Most likely they consume stolen goods. They ate from fields of people without asking permission. A cow was raised by a farmer. You won't find cows that are in the wild. Kosher animals are usually domesticated. Part of the reason is because they did not steal to live by. A deer lives in the wild. You can bring a deer on the altar. Kosher, whatever antelope, they're kosher. There are other animals. You can't use them on the altar. Which one you can bring on the altar? Only domestic animals that we know they cannot survive in the wild, meaning the owner, the farmer, had provided them with the food. When it comes to a dove, she lives freely. and therefore the innards of a stolen good does not belong in the altar, even though it's a kosher animal. Because klipat nuga is the only part that allows us to connect to God. Gimel klipot atmeot, the three unclean klipot shells, are always, without an exception, will never be able to connect, meaning to reward us with revelation of godliness. The three klipot, it's called three. Why three? I think we discussed it before.
So, giraffe is kosher.
A giraffe is kosher, but not on the altar.
Well, suppose from a baby on, he's brought into an enclosure where he's domesticated.
Suppose the giraffe was domesticated. Suppose the dove was domesticated. In fact, most of the doves that were brought on the altar were domesticated. They would create a cage and raise doves because it's a good business. They have discovered in the Davidson Center, it's called, right next to the kotel, to the wall. Now you can go down to the archaeological digs. You find tens of mikvahs. And then you find the marketplace, there were a lot of droppings of doves everywhere. And the reason is because a person before entering the temple wanted to bring a sacrifice. The best one that's not that expensive is a pair of doves. So there is proof of the dove merchants. Most of them, they raise the doves. But the idea is that a dove, the Jewish people are compared to a dove, by the way. The dove will not survive in captivity that long. They needed a large area. And therefore, God said, do not use the innards at any time, no matter what. Therefore, an undomesticated animal, if you domesticated it, it's an unnatural activity, and therefore it's not acceptable. So we just started chapter 37, and God willing, we'll continue next week. Thank you so much, everybody. Goodbye and good night, everybody.